Breathing is the most fundamental pattern to the human body, and it's the fundamental corrective exercise pattern for improving hip and shoulder conditioning. Breathing will set up the thoracolpelvic alignment, it'll set up stabilization, and it'll create the ideal and optimal alignment that we need to enhance proper performance in both the shoulder complex as well as the hip and lower extremity complex. If your breathing and stabilization is off, then there's no way you're going to achieve optimal patterning in either area of the body, and everything else will become a compensation over that or around that. That's why we spend so much time on breathing, and that's why it's a big key to everything we do in the corrective exercise strategy to improving both the hip and shoulder regions. Ideal breathing. Now, ideally, we're going to have the client with their legs at 90-90 position. So we're going to grab a ball and place it underneath the feet. So ideally, the client is about 90-90 position. She's a little bit less than that, but okay for demonstration purposes. At home, have the client put their legs up on a coffee table, couch, chair, whatever they have. The goal of the legs being in this position is to get that thoracolpelvic canister alignment. So the rib cage to feed down into the pelvis. This is the best position to unload the body as well as to achieve that alignment between the thoracolpelvic region. A lot of our clients will actually look like this. They'll have a flared rib cage position. Emily is demonstrating that now, but a lot of our clients are stuck in this position. So breathing will actually help them get that rib cage down and to maintain that alignment. We may also have to have our clients put something underneath their heads because a lot of our clients will be stuck in this elevated position here. So you may have to put a small towel or pillow underneath their necks to achieve this long neck and spine position, because otherwise that will also feed in a lot of these improper respiratory patterns. The key to breathing is to get the diaphragm posteriorly and laterally. Most of our clients have either upper chest breathing or abdominal breathing strategies. Abdominal is better than chest, but the most optimal is when you can get the diaphragm and the ribcage to move laterally as well as posteriorly down into the table to get that three-dimensional effect of the diaphragm and get the diaphragm to push down the abdominal contents towards the pelvic floor, so you have a reflexive contraction of the pelvic floor and coactivation around the entire thoracolpelvic canister. So the first thing I want to do with Emily is I'm going to have her breathe into her abdominal region just to see if she can get her breath down here. I'm going to put my fingers inside the ASISs. So she breathes, I can feel her use the diaphragm fully and push the abdominal contents out, so it pushes my fingers out of her abdominal cavity, her lower abdominal cavity. If they can't get their breath down here, that's got to be the primary focus, is to get that breath to push the abdominal contents down and push your fingers out of the abdominal cavity. Because the goal here, the end goal, is to create increases in intra-abdominal pressure to help stabilize and decompress the low back. So again, she's breathing in. I can feel her pushing out, and it's perfect. You see real nice three-dimensional type breathing. If the client has a real wide, stiff rib cage, I may encourage, or may have to encourage, them dropping the ribs down in the front. So I'll have her breathe in, and as she breathes out, I'm going to help her by drawing down lightly and slightly on the rib cage. Keep the rib cage down. Now breathe wide into my fingers, and now so I'm encouraging her to breathe laterally by holding down the ribs in the front. I can push in lightly into the sides, and she can breathe into my hands again. You see my hands sort of expanding as she breathes there. And now to start to encourage more posterior excursion, I'm going to slide and wrap my hands around the rib cage and have her, same thing, breathe into my hands. I'll compress lightly. She breathes into my hands, and you see my hands opening up, and then breathe out. That's the real key to improving breathing, is to get that lateral and posterior excursion, so that diaphragm and that posterior aspect of the psoas and the QL and the transverse abdominis, where they all attach into that thoracolumbar region, to get them all activated. You have to be able to get the rib cage down and get the posterior lateral excursion of the diaphragm. And she's doing a great job of doing that. And you can start to see real nice alignment of her thoracolpelvic junction, and you don't see those lower ribs flared anymore. That's maybe all you can accomplish with your clients in their first few sessions. Because if they can't get that, it doesn't matter how they activate their abdominal wall. It will be incorrect. So I want to make sure that alignment and the strategy is improved, because without that, I cannot get the client to develop an optimal intra-abdominal pressure mechanism to stabilize their spine as well as decompress the spine. The next piece of the next piece of it is to get her to activate her abdominal wall while she's diaphragmatically breathing. So I'm going to put my fingers right inside her ASIS again. I'm going to have Emily take a deep breath into my fingers, push my fingers out, and then I want her to resist me as she breathes out. I want her to resist me pushing my fingers in. She's not sucking in, she's not pushing out, she's resisting me pushing my fingers into her abdominal wall, and she gets real nice activation through her entire abdominal wall. If she gets it here, I know she's got it up here. So that's why I have my fingers down low, and I feel a tension. I can't push my fingers in. It's not a heavy contraction. Let me show you the difference with when she activates real hard. So pull your belly button in like you're going to get punched, and now that's a rigid bracing, and relax that just for a minute. And you see what happens to her entire body as she does that? Do that one more time. She sucks in, she posteriorly tilts, and lumbar spine flexes, and she creates a whole sense of rigidity through her entire thorax and even into her shoulders and neck when she does it improperly. That's a bad strategy to use to stabilize because it overcompresses your body, creates too much compensatory changes in her neck, shoulders, and through her spine position. So she's going to relax, breathe three-dimensionally again. She's going to breathe into my fingers. As she breathes out, I'm going to push my fingers in. She's going to resist me, and now she stops me from pushing in. That's the key to improving stabilization, the ability to activate and still maintain that activation while you three-dimensionally breathe and use a diaphragm like a piston action to generate pressure through the thoracolpelvic canister. I want to make sure she also gets lateral excursion. So again, relax everything, Emily. Good, nice and relaxed. I'm going to push my fingers into her lateral abdominal wall. Same thing. I'm going to tell her to stop me from pushing my fingers into the abdominal wall, and now I feel a little bit of tension. But again, there was no change to the entire system. She just activated to resist me. I didn't tell her what to do. I just said resist me pushing my fingers in, and now I've got that transverse abdominis as it wraps around and ties in to the thoracolumbar fascia, where the transverse, diaphragm, psoas, QL, lats, and even those low traps down attached right at the thoracolumbar junction. That area is key to improving stabilization of the thoracolpelvic canister and improving function of the entire system. So again, activate, don't let me push my fingers in. Continue to breathe into my fingers. She's still going to breathe down posteriorly and wide. And you see real nice coactivation of the entire deep abdominal system. And then when we start to teach her exercises to do on top of this, like maybe a leg lift or an arm lift or during a squat pattern, she knows how to activate and breathe without compromising either function. Because if she cannot maintain that co-contraction and co-ability, she will lose core control. She'll have to use her shoulder girdle to try to stabilize. She'll try to use her deep hip rotators to try to stabilize. She'll compress down to create stability by an artificial means. This is the ideal system and strategy to use to create stability through all our functional patterns that will take through into the upright position during all our fundamental movement patterns of pushing, pulling, squatting, lunging, rotating, and even gait.